She once walked the Louis Vuitton runway in gold heels.
Clothes to wear that look beautiful. The clothes that really embrace the inner side of who we are as well.
And later that year, washed her own clothes in a refugee camp basin. Alek Wek's beauty was never the kind you could explain. It was elemental, like rain on red clay or fire against velvet night. Designers didn't see her coming, neither did the world. At 18, she stormed into fashion like thunder. Bare scalp, dark skin, no apology. In an industry allergic to difference, she became impossible to unsee.
Try and really see what I want in my life and, incorporate when I come to work.
Her face didn't just redefine beauty, it unsettled it. Editors stared, critics fumbled, but the runways, they bowed. Galliano, Chanel, Mugler, everyone wanted the girl from nowhere who walked like she'd always belonged. She made chaos look regal, carried war in her bones, and walked like it was choreography. Her body spoke fluent survival, but her presence, that was art. She didn't arrive with whispers. She arrived with a legacy. And still, people reduced her to novelty, the model with unusual features, the girl from Africa, the token. But Alek was never interested in being invited. She was interested in being undeniable. They saw the model, the muse, the moment. But what the world didn't see was the girl who fled bullets barefoot, holding her mother's hand under a blood-orange sky. Early life. Alek was born in Wau, southern Sudan, when the air still smelled of mango trees and dust. Her childhood was stitched with colors. Her mother's beaded necklaces, the ochre of the earth after rain, the blinding white of peace before war. Her family was large, full of laughter and loud opinions. She was the seventh of 9 children, slim, long-limbed, always moving, always listening. Their home had no mirrors, but Alek knew beauty from rhythm, how her mother pounded sorghum with grace, how the women painted their faces with ash and clay before celebrations. She learned that elegance wasn't something you bought, it was something you carried. Her father was educated, dignified, a man who built their home brick by brick, even after a hip injury forced him to walk with a cane. He read under trees and taught Alek how to hold a pencil like it mattered. He called her my bright one. She believed him. But then the gunfire came. It started like a rumor and ended like thunder. Civil war swallowed her town in days. Her father died when she was just 12. The family scattered like embers. Alek, her mother, and siblings fled on foot, through rivers, over dirt roads, past villages burning behind them. She walked for days, then months, then what felt like forever. The refugee camp in Khartoum wasn't hope, it was pause. A leaking tent, stale rice, quiet rage. Alek helped wash clothes for strangers. She still carried herself like royalty, even barefoot, even hungry. Her legs grew stronger, her spine never folded. Later, they made it to London, a miracle wrapped in paperwork and exhaustion. She didn't speak English. She stood out in school like thunder on a clear day. The other girls wore lip gloss. Alek wore trauma she didn't have words for. But even then, even in the cold, strange city, strangers turned to look, not with pity, but with something else. Curiosity, admiration, recognition. The war had taken her home, her father, her certainty, but it had given her something else, a presence that refused to shrink. First love, heartbreak, fall. She never planned to be seen, not like this. At 18, Alek was spotted at a street fair holding a bag of plantains and wearing a borrowed jacket 2 sizes too big. A modeling scout stopped mid-sentence to ask her name. She laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. Her first photo shoot felt like a dare. The lights, the angles, the stylist who called her skin perfect, like no one had ever said it before. She looked at the images and saw a stranger, elegant, intense, still. someone who looked like silence sculpted in bone. Suddenly, the fashion world wanted her, but Alek was still figuring out if she wanted it. Fame came fast. So did the invitations, the champagne, the men in tailored suits who said her story was inspiring. One in particular stayed longer than the rest, a European art director with kind eyes and expensive taste. He introduced her to oysters, to Versace, to heartbreak. He said he loved her mind, her strength, but always with an asterisk. You're so beautiful for a black girl. You're so exotic. You're not like the others. His compliments cut like silk, soft but slicing. The relationship ended quietly. There was no scandal, just silence. And a necklace. Gold, delicate, engraved with her name. A gift from him. She kept it in a drawer for years, not because she missed him, but because it reminded her what it felt like to be both seen and misunderstood. During this time, the headlines celebrated her. Trailblazer, icon, muse. But Alek was folding into herself. The world saw high cheekbones. She felt homesick. The world saw gowns. She remembered ration lines. She wore confidence like a gown at first, borrowed, dramatic, not quite hers. But over time, it became real. Not loud, just unshakable. The necklace stayed in the drawer, but her spine stayed straight. Because sometimes the heartbreak isn't in who you lose. It's in realizing who never really saw you in the first place. Reinvention, iconic route. Alek didn't just walk into fashion. She fractured it. Her second runway season was Paris, and the room tilted. She walked for Galliano in a feathered crown that brushed the chandelier. No wig, no apologies, just skin like onyx and posture like prophecy. Backstage, models whispered, editors scribbled, but Alek walked like she'd done it barefoot through war, because she had. Then came Chanel. Karl Lagerfeld called her a face of the future with an old soul. She closed the show in a cream tuxedo with no shirt underneath. It was less fashion, more coronation. In Milan, she was late to the Prada fitting. Her train stalled. She arrived with wet hair and no makeup, expecting to be dismissed. Instead, Muchicha watched her sip tea and said, "That's the look." She walked that season with damp hair and bare skin. The industry called it brave. Alek just called it being on time. Her face became campaign currency. Clinique, Dior, Banana Republic. But the real shift came when she stopped being cast for difference and started being cast for dominance. At one show, a junior stylist tried to lighten her foundation. Alek calmly removed it with a tissue, reapplied her own shade, and walked the runway last. Unplanned, unforgettable. Every season was a reinvention. Not for Alek, but for the brands that finally caught up. She didn't change her look. She made the look change for her. In a sea of sameness, she became the exception that rewrote the rule. Not by asking, but by arriving.
Style, activism, values. Alek never wore fashion to fit in. She wore it like punctuation. Her looks weren't loud. They were pointed. A crisp white shirt, always slightly oversized. Trousers that moved like confidence. Gold hoops shaped like tradition. A shaved head that made her neck look like sculpture. She didn't style herself to look expensive. She styled herself to look intentional. Her closet was a mix of runway pieces and refugee practicality. One shelf held Louboutins, the other, hiking boots from a trip back to South Sudan. She once wore a Lanvin gown with a canvas tote that read, "Hope is a muscle." It wasn't a stunt, it was the truth. Each morning began with silence, not scrolling. Tea, not texts. She ironed her clothes herself, even on shoot dates. Her favorite ritual? Rubbing shea butter into her elbows, because softness, she said, should be chosen, not expected. But behind the elegance was activism. Real, sweaty, on-the-ground work. She traveled to refugee camps not as a guest, but as a mirror, speaking to young girls in Arabic and Dinka, telling them their future didn't have to shrink to fit their situation. She partnered with the UNHCR, launched school programs, built water wells, but she never posed for charity. She posed for equity. She told one designer, "I won't wear that dress unless you donate to this fund." He did, twice. When the industry asked her to speak on diversity, she didn't write a statement. She wore a dress covered in the names of African tribes. A journalist asked if it was cultural. Alek replied, "It's mine." She once said, "Fashion gave me a platform, but Sudan gave me my spine." And maybe that's why she still walks like a woman carrying two worlds, grace in one hand, grit in the other. Because when your roots run deep, your heels never shake.
Legacy, legal drama, present. Alek's legacy didn't arrive like a headline. It built slowly, like dust on glass, until you realized she'd been shaping the reflection the whole time. There was no courtroom, no scandal. Her battles were quieter, but far more intricate. One of the most defining came not from the fashion world, but from a global refugee conference. She was scheduled to speak last, slotted behind CEOs and politicians. One diplomat called her segment a human interest palate cleanser. Alek smiled. Then she stepped onto the stage and made the room remember war. She spoke without tears, without theatrics, just facts, wrapped in elegance. "I didn't flee for your inspiration," she said, in a navy silk blouse that pooled like ink under the lights. "I fled because I wanted to live. My story is not decorative." The room stood. Some clapped, some didn't know how. Fashion tried to claim her as a symbol, but Alek kept slipping out of its grasp. Her image lived on Tumblr mood boards, in museum retrospectives, in the memory of every young Black girl who saw her and suddenly understood their features were future, not flaw. She never sued a brand, but she boycotted more than one, quietly, fully. She once returned a $40,000 campaign check because the creative team refused to darken the lighting to match her skin properly. "If you can't light me," she said, "you don't deserve me." Her legacy online is both curated and chaotic. There's an iconic gif of her turning mid-walk on a Paris runway, bare scalp glinting, cheekbones slicing air. It's been used in countless videos with captions like, "When you remember who the TF you are." Gen Z worships her without fully knowing her name, and somehow she prefers it that way. She received humanitarian awards quietly. One came from the United Nations, another from her hometown, Wow, rebuilt with patches and prayer. At the latter, she wore a dress sewn by a local woman and danced barefoot in the red dust. The video went viral, but she never reposted it. Alek doesn't care for legacy in the traditional sense. She said, "I'm not a monument, I'm a current. I keep moving." But still, her influence is everywhere. In campaigns that finally featured dark-skinned models as the face, not the token. In the way casting agents hesitate before calling someone too ethnic. In the silent shift of the industry's lighting techniques. She mentors quietly. One model said Alek met her in a bathroom at a casting call, fixed her posture, and whispered, "You walk like someone else dressed you. Never do that again." That model is now on 4 magazine covers. In her apartment, sleek, sunlit, and with walls the color of bone, there are no trophies, just books, shelves of Sudanese poetry, old black and white photos, and one framed drawing, a child's crayon sketch of Alek wearing a crown, from a refugee camp in Uganda. She said, "I looked like the moon." She said no to memoir deals. "Too early," she says. "I'm still gathering sentences." But her voice lives in speeches, in essays, in the cadence of interviews where she dismantles questions like puzzles. One journalist asked, "Do you feel beautiful now?" Alek laughed. "I never stopped. I just stopped waiting for someone else to say it." She spends her time between New York, Juba, and Nairobi, splitting her days between fashion panels and field visits. She wears linen more than leather now, eats more plantains, and still irons her clothes every morning. She's not interested in being remembered. She's interested in being useful. But whether she likes it or not, Alek Wek is now part of the blueprint. She came from dust and became diamonds. And she made sure the world saw both. Style philosophy, beliefs. Alek never dressed for approval. She dressed like someone building her own map. Her clothes were never loud. They whispered. A floor-length coat in camel, her shield. A single bangle carved from ebony, her anchor.
sandals instead of heels at premieres because presence didn't need elevation. Her signature was simplicity, but it wasn't minimalist. It was memory-driven. A tunic from Kenya, a necklace once owned by her grandmother, scarves gifted by women in refugee camps, worn like armor. Nothing about her style was performative. It was preservation. Every piece said, "I remember where I came from." Her rituals were sacred. Mornings began with shea butter rubbed into her shoulders like a prayer. She dressed slowly, with intention, never rushed. She ironed her linen pants with the same focus she once used to fold ration blankets. Neat, dignified, precise. She didn't wear logos, she wore lineage. And if she wore red lipstick, it meant she was preparing for battle. The soft kind, the public kind. When asked to define her style, Alek simply said, "My body is my legacy. My clothes just help translate it." She refused to wear white unless it was for ceremony, and she never wore black to mourn. She said, "I come from color. Even grief deserves light." She didn't dress rich. She dressed ready, ready to speak, to walk, to return home at any moment. Because for Alek, beauty was not about decoration, it was about direction. And perhaps her boldest accessory was always her bare scalp, unbothered, regal, and free. A crown not made of metal, but of memory. Legacy 2025 update. The scarf is still there, folded neatly in a drawer beside a vial of Sudanese jasmine oil and a worn notebook. It's faded now, cornflower blue, edges frayed, but Alek still wears it on long flights. Not for fashion, for grounding. In 2025, she walks less, but glows more. The industry calls her the woman who changed the light. Because after Alek, photographers finally learned how to light dark skin without apology. She spends more time off-grid, barefoot in Nairobi, sipping hibiscus tea on balconies that overlook dust roads. She mentors quietly, speaks rarely, posts nothing. Her silence is no longer defiance, it's luxury. Her scalp remains bare, still a crown, but now it's kissed by time. Freckles she once concealed now left untouched. She's not chasing youth, she's reflecting it, like a mirror passed down. She's often seen in a soft linen coat, one she's worn for years. A young model once asked why she didn't replace it. Alek smiled and said, "Because it still fits the version of me I respect." She was never just a model, she was a migration in heels. And in 2025, she's become something rarer than relevance, reference. In school books, she's a case study. In salons, a quiet nod. In refugee camps, a name whispered with awe. She didn't just survive history, she styled it. And maybe that's the real legacy. Not that she became iconic, but that she did it barefoot with her whole country watching. She is not the exception, she is the echo.